Another thing that's important about the immigration too, that I can see why the elites are for it, of course, is yes, it's going to be cheap slave labor. People are going to be able to work for under the table, under minimum wage, send it back to their home countries. That's fine. The other thing with the immigration is it does make sense for population collapse too. Why there is and could potentially be a push for having all these illegals come into the country, because as the birth rate continues to drop, it's going to destroy our nation and all the other Western nations. And a big problem that China is going to have too is also going to be the population collapse, because that the one child policy where families could only have one child. I mean, I'm talking about fucking devastating to your future country. The battle between the US and China over the next 10 to 20 years is going to come down to the population collapse. Who can actually maintain population growth versus who's going to lose it. That's going to determine the economic power moving forward, because people at the end of the day is going to be the most important part of GDP, of the wealth of a nation. Well, not people and wealth. You got to have both, because India obviously has a shit ton of people, then they don't have a lot of wealth. China, way more people than the US, but not as much wealth, but they're coming up on us. We have a lot of people, but we're clearly the richest, right?
Yeah.
So I love the route that Trump and the right is going, which is, as opposed to importing all of our humans and importing our population and completely changing the demographic of the nation and destroying the nation culturally, which is a bad idea, right? They're going the route of, well, how about we just have families? How about we just have more children? How about we put people in a position where it's actually makes sense to have kids, as opposed to making them feel like they could never afford children? Which, by the way, yes, you can afford children. People who are in the fucking actually poorer people have more children than rich people, which is why it's funny. Yeah. So it's not that you can't afford kids, you just don't feel like having kids. That's the reality of it. I tell that to girls all the time. I always ask them, so how many kids do you want? 1, 2? 2? What do you mean 2 kids? Why 2 kids? Well, because it's going to be a lot of work. Yeah, I know. It's just going to be a lot of work to have a lot of kids. Okay, so you don't want to have kids because it's inconvenient to you. What the fuck? Oh, yeah, well, I don't want to do the whole fucking point of you being alive is to have children. And you don't feel like having more than 2 kids because it's too much work. What the fuck? That's the whole fucking point. Anyways,
that's why the girl boss movement sucks. It's like that's not what women did. You think about the baby boomers, right? What were their moms doing? These guys were out working one job, making $80,000. They had 2 cars. They had 7 kids. They were putting them all through college. All of this. That's what we need to get back to, and that's what we could get back to, is that economic. Like, we had such good economic prosperity that guys were able to have 5, 6, 7 kids while their wife stayed at home and took care of the kids. Absolutely. We don't have that anymore.
You're right. And I feel I can understand why women feel the need to be working. I get it, because economically, yeah, it's difficult for a man nowadays to just have a job that can take care of a family that big. It is. I get that. I sympathize with that. So it is difficult. But for the women that think that they should just go out and be career ladies and never stop working and never quit their job to take care of their kids, all this shit, you're fucking wasting your time. You're going to get no fulfillment out of doing that long term. What do you think is going to be more fulfilling for a woman? The fact that you're 60 years old and you have 8 children and 30 grandchildren, all who love you, come to see you all the time, Christmases, all these things, or no children, no family, but you worked a fucking job.
I know, that's how it blows my mind when I hear people say they don't want kids. I'm like, well, what else are you going to do? What are you going to do when you're 60 years old? Like, what else are you going to do? You're going to go to the club? You're going to, go, like, what are you going to do?
Exactly. Having no children is fucking blasphemy. It's a waste of the blessing of life that you received. It's a disrespect to God himself to say, oh, thank you, God, for giving me this life, this opportunity to breathe air, to experience this beautiful life that we have. But I'm not going to give that experience to anybody else. I'm not going to contribute to society as a net positive at all. I'm simply going to come, I'm going to be born, I'm going to consume, I'm going to enjoy myself, and then I'm going to die and completely destroy my entire bloodline for the last 200,000 years. Like a fucking idiot. Fucking
I'm going to scroll Instagram Reels until I'm 85. Just watch Instagram reels all day.
Yeah, upload me to the dashboard and put me in the fucking AI. I'll just fucking keep doom scrolling in my death. What the fuck, bruv?
So to go back to your point about China, and I think this is where things get interesting, like you said, over the next 10, 20 years, is because China is powered by manufacturing and manpower. They need people to run these plants, and they need people to create all these things that run their economy, right? They're built off cheap labor and manufacturing. So what happens when they get to the point where they can't run these manufacturing plants anymore? Well, I mean, obviously they'll have help with AI and robotics coming up, and I think they're more equipped than other countries to do so. But what happens when that population does take a decline and these skills that people have done for them over the past 100 years or so in the manufacturing and all that kind of stuff? What happens when that takes a step back and they have to go the route of the United States of being more of a service-based economy, creating tech and creating kind of ideas and creating film, art? What happens when they have to transition to that side of things as opposed to the cheap manpower that they've had the luxury of having with this 1.2 billion person population?
Yeah, it's interesting because in China, to that point, China hasn't even completely industrialized. Not their whole country. It's pockets of it that are industrialized. China still has a huge population of just completely destitute farmers, people living in the just shitting in on the ground and fucking holes, and so they still have that too. That's the thing, is they haven't even been able to fully first world their entire country the way that the US has. The US everywhere is, you don't have, a completely different group of people just living out on farmland who have no sewage, plumbing, electricity, that kind of shit, that how they do in China, the mainlanders. But yeah, that transition is where I believe that China in the long term is going to start to fall back behind the US again. In the next 10 years, China should be able to continue to creep up on us because we have to fix our fucking industrial base. We have to fix our industry. We've got to bring wealth back to the nation as opposed to sending it out. Hopefully Trump can keep this for the next 4 years with the tariffs and money coming in, and then the 4 years after that with Vancino, hopefully. But where China's going to falter is, like what you're saying, is when they have to get to that next level of economy as their population is also collapsing at that point in time. I don't see how they're going to be able to continue to surpass the US economically and as a world power, because as a service-based economy sounds good, but how are you going to do that with the declining population, declining people to be service-based, and then who are you going to serve? All the old people who, like, it's yeah, I don't see it happening. They're going to have to fix their shit. But China's also going to do radical things. They could do radical things. They did a one-child policy. They could do a four-child policy. And so you have
to have four.
That's what the U.S. should do. If you get married, you should have 4 kids. Or, I mean, you shouldn't force anybody to do anything, but you should give incentive to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of are, right? Aren't they doing tax relief now for people? Each kid now, you get a certain amount of tax deduction off your tax return. I'm pretty sure I saw them. I think it's like 7,000 maybe or something like that. The U.S. is implementing that with the big beautiful bill. So the more kids you have, the more tax incentivized you are, which is great. But I saw what's his name? The NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So a reporter asked him kind of about the AI race, the crypto race with China, and the question was very like point blank, like, is the U.S. going to beat China over the next 10 years in the AI race? And he's like, this isn't a 10-year race. He's like, this is a multi-generation, long lifetime race. He's like, we're not racing for the next 10 years. He's like, we're racing for the next 10 generations to be able to beat. He's like, this race is not going away anytime soon. And that kind of like put it into perspective to me. Like, listen, right now it's very heated, right? It's a heated race. It's the AI boom. We're going to be able to have unlimited amount of AI workers building things, robotics coming up in the next 50 years. But what happens after that? And that's like what we're talking about, is once we get to that point, who's going to take the lead? And I think we have a lot of smart guys in our country who are going to be able to set us up for that. Elon Musk, this guy Jensen, So yeah, the race is not a 10-year race, it's not a 20-year race, but it's a multi-generational race over the next couple hundred years.
And you got to incentivize these guys to want to do business in the U.S. That's why you can't tax them into oblivion. That's why you can't litigate them to death. That's why you can't throw them in jail. You have to create a society, a country where these people want to come and innovate. China, the downside that they have is that they don't protect intellectual property. They don't do copywriting. They just steal everything. So as a business owner, you're less incentivized to go run your business in China if you're operating out of a different country. So the advantage that the US could have is, well, we're not going to litigate, but we do. That's the issue. But we do litigate billionaires and millionaires to death. But we do destroy people financially in the US if they don't do the things that we like, etc. You can't do that. The reason so many people go to Dubai is because no taxes on your business. They're not going to throw you in jail for, I mean, they'll throw you in jail for different shit, degenerate shit, which is fine.
Yeah.
But business-wise, all these millionaires and billionaires go there because they know they're not going to get thrown in jail because they're, the owner of Telegram, right? And they throw him in jail when he goes to France because he won't let the French intelligence services tap into the back end of Telegram to spy on people. In Dubai, he's fine because they're not going to throw him in jail for that. But in France, he's not. So how are you incentivizing these guys to come to your country and innovate if you're going to throw them in jail because they don't do something illegal for you because you want power?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Of course you're gonna push these people away. The one other point I was going to make, I've said this before, but I want to say it again.